I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today I'm talking about Russell Branded by the Me3 media smear campaign. I will start with a tweet, which is never trust a woman who goes to the media instead of the police. And I will add, who waits 10 to 20 years before making a complaint. Or trust reporters who report hype as if it's news. The only difference between mainstream media and the gossip rags is now the font size. I will also say that if you have to go back a decade or more in order to dig up dirt on someone, they must be living a pretty boring life. If, like me, you live under a rock, you may not be aware that there was a coordinated missile attack launched by 3 British media at Russell Brand on Friday, September 15th. This was in the form of Channel 4 doing Russell Brand in plain sight, which had 4 accusers, 3 of whom were anonymous and may, they say, be played by actors. What could be wrong with that? Having actors who are playing teary-eyed, traumatized victims in a so-called documentary. All of the alleged events were between 2006 and 2013. No complaint or charge was ever filed, and they're all based on unsubstantiated claims and subjective characterizations. Channel 4 shows one actor describing an event and then plays a clip of Russell making a joke on stage about the same thing. They imply that that's corroborating evidence, rather than the more likely possibility that the story was made up after seeing the joke. The most serious was a 3-month relationship with a 16-year-old, until I read that the age of consent in England is 16. Really? If the British don't believe that sex can be consensual at 16 years old, why don't they change their law? You can't have it both ways, that it's perfectly legal unless we don't like you and want to bring you down. The controlled demolition is evident by the free fall speed. His agent dropped him like a rock, along with the publisher of his books on addiction and recovery. His tours have been canceled by the venues. The BBC has pulled all shows that feature him. YouTube has demonetized him and is preventing advertisers from sponsoring him. The recovery charities to which he's provided major support have disowned him. Even the pub he owns in town is now shuttered. And as Simulation Commander has just posted the letters sent by the House of Commons, Committee on Culture, Media, and Sport, to both TikTok and Rumble. It states, his content may be within the community guidelines set out by the platform, but we are concerned that he may be able to profit from his content on the platform. We would be grateful if you could confirm whether Mr. Brand is able to monetize his content, including his videos relating to the serious allegations against him. Were letters also sent to Channel 4, the Times, the Sunday Times, that they could not monetize those same serious allegations, along with every paper that since spread the slander for profit? It leaves no doubt where this attack originated. I created my YouTube channel 2 years ago in response to Russell Brand, who I think is the most perceptive and articulate spokesperson of this decade. I've often said that there's only 2 sides, empire versus sovereignty. Russell is more consistently on the side of sovereignty, both socially and spiritually, than anyone I know. He treats all people as equals and just plain enjoys them, whether it is some famous person he's interviewing or some quirky person who's a fan on Zoom, and whether he agrees with them or vehemently disagrees. So I'm going to be talking in this episode about my personal journey with Russell, and then look at the MeToo Psyops and how that has been used in the past. And then I'm going to look at what believing the women could look like in the real world. And then I'll end with a prediction for Russell 4.0 and what that could mean for all of us. I had never watched Russell Brand before 2021. Somewhere in the dysphoria fog of the COVID con, one of his YouTubes came up, and I clicked and was amazed to see someone telling the truth. I started going through the archive videos on his website until YouTube cut me off and wouldn't let me watch without commercials. And then I did get a YouTube subscription, but he was the only one that I subbed. I was not looking for entertainment. I was hungry for information, but Russell did deliver both. At that point, he was small enough that he invited people to join him on Zoom, and he even took questions. So on the second one that I joined, he was trying to think of a David Graeber quote, and he called on me, and I happened to have one at my fingertips in my book that I read. And then I told him about my book and how it was about how to create small-scale sovereignty, because that's a passion of both of ours. He said, tell me where I can get it, and put that in the chat. And I said, well, that's my dilemma. Do I put it on Amazon and dance with the devil? And he said, dance with the devil, but don't go home with him. So that in the next few months is what I did. And then I also, during that time, kind of that twilight zone of the lockdowns and the slower pace of everyone, my friends and I were talking about our goals. And I said, I really wanted to reach my people, to find my people, and that I wanted to put out a YouTube channel, but I really needed somebody to teach me how to do video. And my friend said, hey, you figured out some other things that are pretty hard, how to self-publish your book. I think that you could do this. And so we did the first video, which is called Why Russell Brand, and I'll link it at the end. And my dance teacher sat in the dog bed so that her head was above the screen and I'd have someone to talk to. And I was in my pajamas, and that was my very first video. So over the next 6 months, I did over 40 YouTubes that were responding to Russell's Under the Skin interviews. These are podcasts on Luminary, where he does really in-depth interviews that are more conversations. And what I did was add my piece of the conversation and use that as kind of a launching pad to be able to spark off of that and put in my ideas. So some of those include Matt Taibbi, Gabor Mate, Jordan Peterson, Vandana Shiva, Anwar Sheikh, Sebastian Junger, Luke Kemp, Sarah Chase, Marianne Williamson, Ian McGilchrist, Alistair McGrath, Bradley Garrett, Daniel Pinchbeck, Tony Robbins, Yanis Varoufakis, Shoshana Zuboff, Crystal Ball, Edward Snowden, Candace Owens, Jeremy Gilbert, Tim Pool, and Jocko Willink. It also includes 3 on Yuval Noah Harari and his interviews with Russell, which have led to the infamous kiss on the forehead. I think this is the first attempt that has been made to take down Russell Brand in conspiracy circles. I have had so many people send me that photo and say, look at this thing that I found. I just don't know whether I can deal with anybody who's fraternizing with the enemy like that and kissing him on the forehead. And do you think that Russell is really with the World Economic Forum? And if I do an episode on that, I will call it, You Must Remember This. A kiss is just a kiss. So I think Russell is the most consistent person I've ever seen in being sincerely appreciative and affectionate towards everyone he interviews. He is a shameless and equal opportunity flirt with men and women, old and young, but always of consensual flirting age. I hope this ridiculous smear attack doesn't change that, because I have a lot to learn from him in that. Between his YouTubes, interviews, guided meditations, audiobooks, and theater, I suspect I've logged hundreds of hours of listening to Russell Brand. My first and most loyal YouTube subscribers were ones I lured in Russell's comment threads. At 10 a.m., when he would post, I would hit refresh, 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 and then I would have a comment that was already cut and ready to paste. And especially if he was talking about an interview that he'd done that I had responded to, I would try to get that in there. So if I could get in the first 30 comments before they would go to like 5,000 usually, I could maybe get some people to start responding to me. So these are some of my most beloved subscribers who are people of tremendous integrity who really walk the walk. And they're people from Australia and Scotland and England and Maine and Utah and all those places in between. So I hear you saying, that's all dandy, but shouldn't we believe the women? And I want to say, based on recent episodes that if you have been watching, you know that I've done, if you have a need to believe some women, I suggest that you stand in line at the family legal help at your local courthouse, as I recently did. And you too can watch mothers juggling a baby and 2 kids while they're standing in an interminable line, and you can listen to them sobbing when they find out that the restraining order has been denied. I was there picking up the case file for my neighbor who spent 11 years not being believed by anyone that her children had been kidnapped by an abusive husband with the help of a crooked lawyer and a corrupt judge. Everything that I have found in that case file, as you know if you've seen that episode, corroborates exactly what she was saying. And now that she finally has her daughter home, those are charges that will be brought. But those are some women that you could be believing. People, including the mom, have been giving me credit for that miracle. But all I did was not believe her, but take her seriously and investigate the facts. I followed the links to look at the pattern of the judge in giving custody to abusive dads in comment after heartbreaking comment. Another woman to be believed is Annika Lucas and the survivors of the child rape and torture under the guise of satanic rituals. Don't believe her. Do your homework. Read Whitney Webb's One Nation Under Blackmail to see all of the connections to Epstein, and big box media could be investigating those. At this moment, this very moment, some child is being groomed in how to seduce her rapist. You could change that by paying attention. But as long as we're distracted by celebrity takedowns, who cares what's going on under our noses? Where else has this MeToo 1-2 punch been used? I think the closest parallel is Julian Assange, where allegations of sexual misconduct were used to demand his extradition to Sweden, where he certainly would have been sent to the US and had been in prison decades sooner. So let's actually look at that case, which changed the whole tide of how upset people were about that and made it where, oh, we don't care about him. He's some sexual predator. Let's look at that. What were the actual charges? Niles Meltzer, UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, was shocked to find that one of the 2 women, who was only accompanied by the other, was horrified when the police officers in front of their eyes began to construct a rape report from her statements, as she repeatedly emphasized She had completely mutually agreeable intercourse with Assange and only went to the authorities to inquire whether it would be possible to oblige him to have an AIDS test afterwards. As soon as she noticed that the police had started to do something completely different, she stopped the interview in shock and left the guard room. Nevertheless, the headline appeared in the Swedish tabloid press a few hours later: Julian Assange accused of double rape. The second woman, who initially only served as an accompaniment, plays an opaque role. According to Meltzer, not only did she suggest that the first woman go to the police, but she also persuaded her to the guard room where a friend of hers was on duty. This was the same person who then, and that was already a legally incorrect procedure, made the questioning. Later, this policewoman friend also falsified the document. In other examples, sexual exploitation is normalized until it's a convenient hammer to use. Brad of Euphoric Recall writes about revisiting the ouster of Andrew Cuomo. While I agree with Brad that the targeting was politically motivated, one of Cuomo's practices was allowing senior staff members to sit on his lap at official functions. How was that very public act ever seen as business as usual? In my book, I write about Dominique Strauss-Kahn, then president of the International Monetary Fund, who announced in 2011 he was going to remove the dollar as the world's reserve currency and replace it with special drawing rights, SDRs, backed by a basket of currencies, essentially what's happening now with the BRICS 12 years later. In May of that year, Strauss-Kahn boarded a plane from the U.S. when police clambered on board and arrested him. A judge denied bail, and they took him off to Rikers Island. The charges? As the chambermaid, flanked by prestigious lawyers, told the media, he'd chased her in a towel and forced her to perform fellatio, with which she'd complied because she was afraid of being fired. I remember at the time Amy Goodman celebrating this as a triumph of justice. Finally, sexual assault was getting the gravity it deserved, and a poor immigrant woman from Ghana could take down one of the most powerful men in the world. It sounded almost too good to be true, which it was, of course. Although the charges were dropped due to her lack of credibility, Strauss-Kahn resigned at the IMF and dollar hegemony continued. And that's from my book, How to Dismantle an Empire. So Russell Brand is the most outspoken critic of geopolitics, economics, and biowarfare, with the largest and best informed global audience. That is just a fact. So if you are believing that someone who is spreading a message with which you agree to the most number of people has to be inherently corrupt, I think you need to examine your motives. Now, I get it. Envy is my go-to deadly sin, as I talk about in one of my episodes. But it does not serve us. It is self-defeating to believe that if anyone is actually being successful, they must be on the other side. Actually read, listen to what he has to say, and come back and tell me what it is that you think is contradictory. Because this is my specialty. I hoist people on the petard of their own words by examining them and looking for contradictions. I do that with the Bible, with the Constitution, with World War II. I do that with Robert Malone and 15 episodes on him. In every case, what I'm looking at is, here's what this person says that they stand for, but here's what it actually says. Do that with Russell Brand and maybe I'll listen to you. But if you're saying, I listen to the women, or I don't trust anyone who kisses the enemy on his hairless pate, then I just have one thing to say to you. Do not complain to me when they come and take your body, your house, your job, your money, your land, the forest, and your life, because you have your virtue signaling to keep you company. For Russell, I have some predictions. I think this is the beginning of a whole new phase in your life. A time that you will look back a year from now and say, they did their worst. And I not only survived, but look at this. If it hadn't been for that, this wouldn't have happened. And then this, and then this. And we wouldn't all be in this better place. So if I were to characterize these different phases, it would be Russell 1.0, the pre-fame years, Russell 2.0, the high-flying years, Russell 3.0, the Phoenix years, the years of rising up from the crash and burn of the ashes of that drug and sex addiction and building this incredible life with your beautiful wife, Laura, and your children. And the gossip rags are good for something because I've learned that there's a third baby on the way. So that is magnificent. But what's to come is Russell 4.0, the fearless years. And Charles Eisenstein has a mantra that I have adopted, which is, I am the right person at the right time, in the right place, with the right skills, and I know what to do. That is my message to Russell and to you, my dear listener. Let's not tear each other down. I will be canceling my personal YouTube membership, but I'll still be publishing on YouTube because I think we should use all the tools that we have as long as we can get away with it. And I don't monetize anywhere, so I don't care where you subscribe. I embed them in Substack, and I don't think that it shows ads, but I'll find out when I cancel my membership. I also have a link to Rumble, and if the follow-up videos aren't showing up there, which they don't, then you can go to Substack and I have them linked there. So this is my very first video filmed in my pajamas with my dance teacher in the dog bed called Why Russell Brand. And this is Russell Brand's video responding to this saying, so this is happening. Thank you for watching.